All right, we enter into the second session. Good morning, and my apologies to the deputations. We have overrun in the first session. Sorry to have kept you waiting. On behalf of the Commerce and Industry panel, may I welcome you to this meeting. This is a special meeting on the consultation paper on dealing with parody under our copyright regime. Please put on the earpieces and choose the right channel. Channel 0 is the floor channel. Channel 1 is the Cantonese channel, and Channel 2 is the English channel. Because time constraint, I can only allow each deputation to speak for 3 minutes. And in the previous session, I was asked to keep the time strictly, and I will not allow any leeway, not even a single second. If you cannot complete your presentation, you can just provide your submissions in writing, and you may highlight your presentation. And let me remind you that what you say here is not protected by the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance. So, and also when you speak, please do not use Chinglish. That will make life difficult for our interpreters if you do so. Yes, the first speaker, Mr. Choi. Good morning. I will speak in Cantonese. The Alliance supports option 3. And option 3 should include parody, pastiche, and satire, and caricature. And we also support option 4. And that is individual exemption given to individual users. This will give greater protection to the citizens. We have attended other public hearings, and we've heard that heard doubts about option 4 and whether option 4 can enable Hong Kong to discharge our international obligations. We believe option 4 is able to do so. Option 4 is even stricter than fair use in the United States. In the United States, fair use does allow an economic benefit, but our fourth option does not allow any economic benefit for the individual. And that is, and commercial use is not allowed. Therefore, our proposal is even stricter than fair use in the United States. In our proposed option 4, each user has his or her own liability or duty. One has to confirm that in using copyrighted products, one must not infringe the copyrights of the owner. The user has to give acknowledgement to the underlying work and the source of the underlying work. Such requirements are not present in the fair use approach in the United States, so we are more restrictive than the fair use. And if the fair use approach can pass the international tests, then ours can also do so. As for the 3-step tests, they are rather general and broad requirements, and they do not have I'll try to be concise and precise. Next, Mr. Duff. I'll tell you a story. And that's about Vanuatu. It is a small place and nobody know about it, but because of an advertisement, it has been known by the people of Hong Kong and those who have publicized Vanuatu culture and linked Vanuatu with Hong Kong culture as a result of derivative works. And in a short video, we know that Vanuatu is more democratic than Hong Kong, and ATV has used that video in its anniversary celebration, and derivative works will not undermine the interests of original works. It can raise the original works to a higher level. Any big corporation and small individuals and even the DAB do make use of derivative works. Well, I am the director of the Terminal Service Sodality Office of the Republic of Vanuatu in Hong Kong, and we support we are of the view that the various options proposed by the administration only undermines freedoms of creativity. We therefore do not support the three options, but we support the fourth option, which is the UGC option. It is just asking you what not to do instead of asking you what to do. As long as the secondary creation does not replace the market of the original work, then it will not breach the law. UGC give rights to secondary creation and also non-secondary creation. Hong Kong has entered Web 3.0 virtual reality. The three options cannot protect people's freedom of creation. We should give the opportunity of creation to the netizens. The government should not suppress creativity. We support the fourth option. We hope that the UGC concept should be included into its final option. I still have some more time concerning giving authorization of the advertisement. Have they got the permission from UK who wants to be a millionaire program? Next, Ms. Leung. I represent the power of Golden Forum. You know that the Golden Forum is a platform for sharing creative works. Most of the creative works are secondary creations. We believe that we oppose options 1 and 2. The bottom line is option 3 and option 4, and in fact it should be 3 plus 4, and that includes UGC, and that includes exemption given to parody. As for secondary creation, we believe that there is nothing new under the sun. Any creation is based on the works of others. Just like writing lyrics, you need to use works, and Chang Jie was the creator of Chinese characters, but he didn't charge any copyright. He didn't charge any royalties. In fact, the creative works are also public resources, and we should use it for public good. Copyright is a concept derived from business, from the development of business. With the development of printing, UK passed a law to protect original underlying work. Therefore, most of the copyright laws in the world were based on the UK law. Copyright has developed to such an extent that it has been serving the business sector. It has become a tool to protect hegemony, and those who owns copyright have all the power, and people will not have any freedom of creation and freedom of expression. Secondary creation is the nutrient for stimulating creativity. When there are more and more secondary creations, people will be more forthcoming in doing their creative work. They influence one another. They stimulate one another. If the secondary creation is hampered, then creativity will be hampered. And as for the condition of more than trivial economic prejudice, well, there is risk in doing business. If you want to protect business, and that will only dampen creation or creativity. If our creation cause benefits, then should you encourage secondary creation? Next speaker is Mr. Hon. Thank you, Chairman. I'm James Hon of the League in Defense of Hong Kong's Freedoms. The League is of the view that the three options proposed by the government cannot effectively protect secondary creation works and those engaged in secondary creation and the rights of the netizens. They only suppress creativity. If the law is passed, it will only put the creative artists on the spot and breach the law. Recently, the proposal made by netizens should be considered, and that is option 4.
Option 4 has strong reference from option 3 plus UGC. UGC is to exempt a non-profit making or business purpose, and they are derivative work. UGC refers to user-generated content. UGC include 4 conditions that they do not involve infringement. It does not undermine the copyright of owners. It is not for profit making, and it does not substitute the original work in its market. These conditions are very reasonable and of great reference value. If the government exempts UGC plus exempting parody, then it would protect the majority of non-profit making secondary creation, and it will also reduce the chance of investigation brought by the copyright ordinance. We are very determined in protecting Hong Kong people's freedom of expression. We think that there is no credibility in today's government. We do not believe that the government will will do something. We think that the government will do something bad, even with good intentions and inadvertently. So the U.S. in the 1960s, the 9 judges decide in a case when involving freedom of expression. They use a few words. That is, it should not be restricted. It should be full of life and given freedom. And I think secondary creation should incorporate these 3 factors as well. Next, Mr. Feng. Thank you. My name is Paul. I'm from the International Federation of Creativity and Technology Limited. I'm the Deputy President, Technology. Our association would like for people from the technology field and people from the creativity field to sit together. We have organized a number of meetings. We hope that copyright owners will cooperate. We have an edge in financial services, but this advantage, together with other competitive edge, are dwindling because we see Tianhai, we also see the Shanghai free trade area. And when it comes to freedom, we rank quite high when it comes to creativity and also freedom of expression and intellectual property. We think that creativity and intellectual property are not conflicting. It's just that given the existing condition, copyright owners think that secondary creation and parody undermine their rights. And the channel among creators are blocked, and there is no cooperation between copyright owners and creators. We see that second creation can adopt the operation of newspapers. When it comes to creation, even if it is a secondary creation, carries copyright and should be respected. I'm an ISP. We are suffering. We are ISPs, but I don't understand why we don't enjoy safe harbor. In the last consultation, there was a very important point. It talked about ISP safe harbor. I don't see that we're on a pedestal. We're just like newspaper vendors in the street. Publication has nothing to do with us. Creation has nothing to do with us. We just put everything on sale. But I don't know why that you know that it's impossible for me to read all the magazines and newspapers I sell. If you tell me, if you ask a newspaper vendor, he may not know the front page of the Hong Kong Economic Journal. It's just like us. I can't touch the server. Even now with the privacy issue, I'll have to stay clear away from it. We rent out servers to users. And sometimes when something happens, these servers will be closed out and we suffer financially as a result. Next, Mr. Leung. Miss Leung. I read from the newspaper that we have a dwindling competitive edge. We say that this is a knowledge-based economy. And if we are to improve our competitiveness, we have to enhance our value in intellectual property. We have to arouse public awareness on intellectual property protection. But the current copyright ordinance cannot keep up with the times. There is insufficient protection afforded. No wonder our competitiveness is dwindling. Well, secondary creation brings economic benefit to us, but we have to see the other side of the coin. We have to look into certain contentious issues to see whether parody should be protected and whether it involves individual interest. And people say that if you support parody, it means that you support unfair competition. And whereas some people say that that there may be a blurring of copyrighted works and parody. These competitors may employ parody creators and in this way they will undermine the competitiveness of their competitor. We don't just think about monetary terms. We also talk about reputation. The value of parody lies in the fact that there is an element of the original work. This will reduce the value of the original work in the market. Of course, we have to respect freedom of expression. But at the same time, we have to protect civic rights. There may be some value of parody, but there should not be any unlimited exemption. I support option 1. Protection of people in secondary creation is already very clear. The existing regime has never stifled the communication and creation of such work, so there should not be any specific referral to the treatment of parody. We need to update the copyright system to better protect copyright work in a digital age, instead of wasting time on talking about protection of parody. Next, Mr. Chan. Good morning, everyone. I've been sitting here listening to a lot of people. All in all, people in general support a parody. A parody is welcome in the internet and for youngsters. We more or less engage in modification of original work to vent ourselves, to see it as entertainment or to express ourselves. So there is a need to support parody. We see that there is a consultation. At least it's a good thing, because they are listening to our views. But we're also concerned the legislation may turn into Article 23 of the Internet. It will suppress our freedom. I want to think rationally that it will not be Article 23 of the Internet, because you will have to go through the customs and excise department and get the consent of the copyright owners, and to go through the DOJ before prosecution is initiated. I think the administration aims at combating large-scale copyright infringement. That is necessary because it protects copyright owners and this respects creativity. I see that there are three options. In option 2, it's quite clear by comparison. But I agree with some who said that when it comes to a civil litigation against people of secondary creation, there may be some difficulties. There may be some unclear points. But will the copyright owners take out litigation against people of secondary creation indiscriminately? I don't think it will happen, because this aims at combating large-scale copyright infringement. Hong Kong is an international society. We have to take into account international practice. It should be a practice that is not too lax, that exemptions will be given to parody, and that there won't be any suppression. I hope the administration will listen to the community and should strike a balance between freedom of creation and expression and protection of copyright. Thank you. Next, Mr. Ma. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Good evening. My name is Funking Ma. I'm from Lagative Council B representative for Sports, Performing Arts, Culture and Publication. I am the B represented. We have CY Leung. Hong Kong people is having a bad time. And we have Mr. Ma Fong-kwok. He said that secondary creation is created by Hong Kong people. But secondary creation has been there since the dawn of time. And Mr. Ma said that it is created by Hong Kong people. Well, it has given us the credit of it. And this also makes us doubt what Mr. Ma said. And if there is no creativity, you can't talk about trade, international trade. We have not taken anything out of the people who benefit from copyright protection. Mr. Ma once said to us that, can you ask Andy Lau not to charge me? And Mr. Ma, the councillor, is on the opposing side of the general public. When people call to ask him whether he call Andy Lau to ask him whether he will give consent and license, he did not pick up the phone. Well, I think that they should require copyright owners to pick up the phone as soon as people call them to ask for consent. And when the secondary creation is only limited to individual use, the copyright owner should not charge. And when it comes to conditions of exemption, please refer to my submission. I would like to protect the integrity of C.Y. Leung and Mr. Ma, the councillor. Well, I think that the relevant parties should be held responsible. Well, you may remember our great Secretary, Greg So, have spoken his mind, and they said that there are reservations when it comes to UGC. But they have completely forgotten about the duty to communicate and disseminate intellectual property. They are stifling the free flow of information. They have taken the hard way, and they do not do what they're supposed to do. The Secretary, Mr. So, has shed tears. So will there be a preconceived stance when it comes to this consultation? Next, Mr. Ng. I represent Junior Chamber International, Hong Kong. We are composed of youngsters between 18 and 25. We have been in Hong Kong for quite some time. We have over 1,100 members and over hundreds of alumni. We believe about equality and also freedom. We incline towards option 3. That should be the main part of legislation. And when it comes to criminal exemption, they should be clearly stated in the legislation. And when it comes to definition, we agree with the 4 groups. That is parody, satire, caricature, and pastiche. Some members talked about different terms. There is a spoof. It's mentioned. We ask the administration to consider including more terms. We would like to see an accommodating and inclusive legislation. We don't agree with a specific statutory definition. When you leave it blank, it will give more room for parody. And in the future, it can be updated, and there will be more room for maneuver. When it comes to the limitation to economic impact, the definition of reputation is difficult and unclear. So we agree that it should only be limited to economic consideration. When it comes to moral rights, but since it is parody, there will be some distortion of the original intent of the original work. So when it comes to exemption, there should be exemptions. When it comes to UGC, at this stage, we have reservations too when it comes to inclusion of UGC. It's too vague. It's difficult to afford protection when you talk about non-profit making. Thank you. Next, Miss Shi. Well, I am talking about how to differentiate between copy and secondary creation. When it comes to IFPI, when there is a acceptance, that is the same as another song. That means it is a copy. There is a group that is invited to attend a show. And some of the work of Mr. amounts to copy, and they modify Mr.'s work to so that it will show that they themselves have engaged in copying. And that is also the reason for requiring certain work to be taken off from YouTube. When it comes to TV shows or movies, it will be difficult to differentiate. Say, for example, TVB, certain elements are copied, and it is slightly the same, and they call it a junior judge Bao, or they just slightly change the name of the title, and you know that it is in effect a copy. Would it become the new benchmark? Let me give you two examples. This is a Vocaloid. The one is green. It was born on the 31st of August. The one in red is a later version created by China. It first appeared in a China show, but you can see that when it comes to the appearance and the color, it is more or less the same. Is it secondary creation? I don't think so. If you look at secondary creation, let me show you this. This is from a company. This is a secondary creation of this Vocaloid, and it appears in Hokkaido every year. And this year is dressed in red. The definition of original work and secondary creation. Well, I've asked the mainland organization. They said that when it comes to their own version, they have not taken reference from any person. They deny that it is a copy of Hatsune Miku. So is it a criminal offense when they just copy a small part of the original work?
Mr. David Chu. Yes, I represent the Voice of Screenshot Captures. I am against the options 1, 2, and 3, but I'm for option 3 plus option 4, and that is UGC. I believe that the paper and its options cannot, as they are put out, cannot protect the secondary creative artists, and they put them at risk in falling into the criminal net. I think the freedom of expression and creativity and creation is very important. Our organization feels that for the activities our members conduct including some LegCo videos, LegCo meetings, and secondary creation of those are all artistic creations and should be protected. And also in the TV stations, the drama, the sitcoms, very often we would have satires on those, and these are secondary creative works as well. We want to see members of the CAPCO to be protected. Our work are not commercial in nature, and we do not harm any copyright holders in their interests. Freedom of expression is important. Mr. Greg So is not here today, but I would want to say to him that for RTHK and also the TV new round of TV licensing, and Ms. Li Wai Ling, who is a radio show hostess, you have been quelling and suppressing their freedom of speech and freedom of expression. I would want all LegCo members to support option 4 in upholding the freedom of expression for the people of Hong Kong. Mr. Mouse, next. I am Hong Kong out of cash, composers of Hong Kong expressing creations under the unbudgeted environment. In remixing and providing new MV for existing music scores, if they are not for commercial purposes, they will not be stopped in Hong Kong. However, we notice in the Hong Kong music arena, there are some so-called copyright owners and companies which are monopolistic in their operations. There is the song which is called Big Love, and it is changed into the Big Love Hong Kong. The lyrics have been changed, and that had been suppressed. And the creator of this secondary creation had been his interest had been undermined because of this monopolistic copyright owner, and also cash as a vested interest party is suppressing the expression, the rights of expression, and certain concerts which were supposed to be staged. And the CHAN Kwok-wai, the head of the IP Commission in Hong Kong, had said that these cash income will be set aside for future usage, and the copyright holders would levy certain fees from these perpetrators, and in order to avoid troubles, there should be certain contracts signed. I mean, this is really the government giving the copyright owners too big overly wide powers and protecting them to an undue extent. And now with this new consultation paper, and to give exemption only to political satires is actually lower in terms of protection than that provided by the options, the 3 options. And music is not included in the protection. There must be protection of the secondary creators, and not those who are into only collecting fees from from copyrights only. I am in favor of UGC. I'm in favor of protecting secondary creators in their being exempt from the this hated legislation, as long as it's not for commercial purposes. Yes, I speak on behalf of HKRP. I understand that the intentions are good for this particular legislation and the consultation. However, for non-commercial related secondary creative efforts, they should be made exempt and should be left alone. Let them not worry all the time whether they are infringing on other people's rights, whether they are infringing on other people's images. In fact, these activities of the secondary creators are not activities that are to be combated for the copyright owners. In fact, the owners should clearly state in their works that they do not welcome any secondary or derivative creations. So they have this commercial decision that they have to make. And I am in support of the UGC concept. The Canadian government had already legislated on the basis of UGC and had implemented their copyright law. And I will also want to see a mechanism for monitoring the copyright owners and their levying of fees. They are saying that there should be a website for people to make reference to or search information for concerning copyrights. But in fact, there should be a clear listing of copyrights and fees attached to them, and not allow them to operate in a black box and to come up with all sorts of exorbitant fees for granting of copyrights. I would want to emphasize that the new legislation must not favor the profit-making copyright owners, that there should be more protection of diversified creativity and secondary creation. Mr. Chai Ki-woo, excuse me, this direct broadcast can cease because my right had been infringed. The happy birthday song that I was singing just now actually has a copyright, and the holder of the copyright is residing in the US or somewhere. And excuse me, the birthday song that I have been singing, what kind of parody was it? What kind of spoofing was it? And so we have to be clear about any exemptions, how wide-ranging it is. A birthday song is part of everyday life for us. Why do we have to make it such a grave offense, criminal or civil, and one can fall foul, if one falls foul of criminal offenses, one can be sued and actually be bankrupt. And in fact, copyright had well been respected for centuries, but let us not go back to the very ancient times, but if we go back to the Song dynasty, there was no copyright whatsoever. But as long as there is respectable and responsible recourse by the rightful owners of copyright, that is fine. But it really should not infringe on everyday life of the people, legitimate activities of our everyday life. And this pertains to the distribution concept in the legislation. If that is extended to communication, and that includes everyday life, like we use a smartphone and we transmit a song or some content, and that amounts to communication or dissemination. If the net is cast that wide, it will be very difficult for us to be lawful and abiding citizens. For the UGC, for it to be implemented in parallel with the other options, I think it is desirable. And even under the WTO very stringent requirements, the UGC had been standing unchallenged. The WTO is really to balance the economic powers and the interests. It is not to protect the individual. Time is up.
I'm asked to address you on behalf of the Motion Picture Association. They represent the major producers and distributors of filmed entertainment. A paper has been presented, and I don't propose to read it. The background of this debate, of course, is... Sorry, I'm speaking in English, so I don't know if you need to...
It's okay, I got your name confused. I'm sorry.
No cause of action. The time is ticking. So, if I may continue?
Yes,
Thank
please.
You. So the background to this, as we all know, is copyright, not freedom of speech. And the copyright that the industry has is limited. It's limited, in particular, as far as this amendment is concerned, to the in communications in the course of trade or business, or to such an extent as to prejudicially affect. And I think it's very important to bear that in mind. So a lot of the parodies that people are talking about, indeed all the other things people are talking about, won't even fall within the provision. If you read the MPA's mission statement, you'll see that it states that online copyright theft is the most serious threat to the movie industry. It also notices that MPA champions the creative and artistic freedoms of filmmakers, including by safeguarding intellectual property rights. So there's no conflict in its position on this issue. To amend or not to amend, that is the consultation. I mean, that's a clear parody of Shakespeare, of course, out of copyright. Most of the examples that have been given, and particularly those given in the paper of the administration, are not that sort of parody. Taking photographs, taking music, and so on. These do potentially fall within the realm of copyright, and they do today, and hopefully they will tomorrow. And Hong Kong, crucially here, needs to keep abreast of technological developments. And the 2011 bill is intended to achieve this, but has been diverted by this issue of parity, I submit. MPA supports the Bureau's efforts to keep the bill on track. Any exemption must clearly satisfy the three-step test and comply with the treaties, which Hong Kong is committed to preserve. Indeed, the current law is committed to preserve in the Basic Law. No exception should be provided unless it is necessary, and one could submit that this is not legally necessary. It appears to be politically necessary, but there's no example of infringement for this kind of activity that I'm aware of under Hong Kong, or indeed international law, except when there has been real infringement, real copying. MPA is therefore concerned not to have a blanket exception for parody, let alone the other pastiches and so on. Shouldn't all be lumped together. But it doesn't object to a carefully crafted exemption based on option 3, i.e. to exempt all liability, as long as we're talking about true parodies and that parody a work and not, say, another work. It doesn't favour extending exemption to these other vague categories of caricature or pastiche. The rest is in the paper.
Okay, thank you. 跟住落嚟下一位就係李生。
好，主席、各位議員、各位市民，早晨！我係中大同人文化推廣前自救學會幹事會成員李佩月。喺發表意見之
I am Li Puyut of the CU Dujin Self-Rescue Before Promotion Society. First of all, let me talk about parodies. There are a lot of parody creators which are of secondary creative nature, and it is an important part of creativity, and it is very often a pre-professional stage of artists, and they are not always play but can be serious. This so-called Tongyan culture is actually very relevant. Two parties, very strong parties of the LegCo, such as the DAB, have talked about this. This is a, look at this. This is Yu Kwan of the DAB, and this is the Tujin culture, and this is the Labour Federation. Look, this had been on the newspapers. This is the legislative members or the party members going to the community to get more votes. However, they have not been authorized to adapt their banners that they used as such. Let me just find out which exemption option would provide the exemption for these party members of the two strongest parties in Hong Kong. For some of the parties, they have a lot of resources and money, and for option 1 and 2, they may not stand. But for option 3, the parody, it does not seem to be in keeping with the kind of parody as described in option 3. So this Tongyan or Dujin culture is actually a kind of respect, and it is a nod to the original works. It is positive, and it is non-competitive, but rather mutually beneficial. And it extends the market for the original works. Why can we not allow this kind of culture and this kind of works? So I would propose that the government considers option 4, and that is UGC, so as to provide the room for development of the progression of the young artists in Hong Kong. Mr. Ho, next.
Thank you. Good morning. I represent the Music Publishers Association Hong Kong Limited. We are talking about the right of the music copyright and also the copyright of lyrics. Each of our members, each of our member association has many songwriters. Some want their songs to be used. They don't mind. Some composers want their songs to be used. They don't mind, but some composers don't want others to use their songs. Each member association respects the intention and wish of the songwriters. I think there is a certain complexity in the various options. We have nothing against secondary creation. In fact, our members can take legal action if they want to target a secondary creation. I think we need a platform. We have grouped a number of people or even groups who like secondary creation, and they can make use of the platform for secondary creation. They don't need to worry about the criminal or civil consequences. They just share secondary creation on that particular platform. We think we should support this kind of platform. Now, the copyright owners have their own view and preference, and those engaged in secondary creation have their worries and concerns. The administration has to clarify how they enforce the law, in particular how they deal with criminal offenses under this law. There has been, there was a certain criminal prosecution. It was against a ringtone operation. They spent about 2 years in dealing with this case. The music publishers cannot easily enforce the law via the action taken by the Customs Department. Next, Dr. Hagen So. Many have given their views. I just want to do some recap with you. Whether I'm engaging in my own profession or when I'm doing voluntary work, I explain the concept of copyright, and the intellectual property department didn't have any objection. I think knowledge and creativity. In fact, we are making use of the copyrights of our predecessors. We are making use of the concepts of our predecessors. And copyright is property is something very different. If you consume, say, an apple, then other people will not be able to consume the same apple. In the past, there is certain restriction imposed so that certain products, the use of certain products are controlled in order to encourage creativity. I think the restriction is only limited, should only be limited. Say in Hong Kong, we have a 50-year limited. Too broad a restriction will stifle creativity. Let's not talk about freedom. If the restriction is too harsh, and then those who are successful will continue to benefit from their creation, but other people are barred from the fruit of their creation or are barred from further creation upon the products. Now, we can even prosecute those who upload copyrighted products. Many say comic or animation owners have say they support the doujin culture. So what's the problem of continuing allowing something like UGC? Now they've gone through a legislative process in Canada. Now many have said that UGC has a problem, but Canada has already accepted that, and it's also observing the TRIPS. The most important thing is not to expand the scope of restriction. Next, Mr. Mok. Yes. Good day. The copyright system should protect copyright owners, the copyright producers, and also balance that with creativity. Option 1 is not just limited to parody, pastiche, caricature, or satire. It also covers other things. Option 2 gives clear exemption to certain acts. And option 3 give exemption to civil liability and also criminal liability. As for the option 1, the definition of more than trivial economic prejudice is unclear, and the protection given to users may just be next to nothing. As for protection given under option 2 and option 3, those that fall outside parody, satire, caricature, and pastiche will not be covered. You may just draw a cartoon which is protected by copyright, and then you share it with your friends or relatives through the internet. That may be infringing copyright. And and option 3 may be used by some copyright owners with ulterior motive to threaten other users. There should be a lenient approach. The copyright is to protect the rights of the original creator, so as to encourage creativity. This is a respect to creation and the creator. It is a cultural policy. It should not be considered purely from the perspective of business. The system should the copyright system should respect creativity. And there are many people who have given their views today. They have raised their concerns, and they have a very good understanding of secondary creation and new media and creativity. And the people's option should also be considered by the administration. At the end of the day, whatever option is enacted, the option should protect creativity. That's the bottom line. Next, Mr. Siu. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I want to speak my view on the system. I want to put emphasis on the conditions for exemption. I think the bill should balance two aspects. Respect the original creators' rights, and also the copyright owner, and vis-a-vis freedom expression. It seems that more emphasis is put on secondary creation or there is a decline of the record industry because of copyright infringement. There is no virtuous cycle created. I support option 3. It can prescribe against certain offenses, and it can also give exemption to certain acts from civil and criminal liabilities. And the conditions should include it should not become the act of secondary. The act should not be commercial for commercial benefits, and it should not cause more than minimum economic prejudice. People will not people cannot use that to cause threats, because one has to go to the court. If one wants to enforce a law, one has to obtain a clear decision from the court, and also there is a clear definition for on infringement if one goes to the court. And if the law is not has not provided a clear definition, precedents can do so, or court ruling can do so. So option 3 can protect the rights of netizens and the copyright owners. As for the UGC approach, I don't think it is appropriate to expand the scope of exemption too wide. Otherwise, the law will not be effective. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Seo. The next is Dr. Hong. Good morning, Chairman and members of the panel. I'm the president of Internet Professional Association. Many of our members work in the Internet, and many may also engage in derivative works or secondary creation. The amendment should balance the interests of different sectors. On one hand, as IT people, we engage in a lot of intellectual property work, and we need copyright protection, but we should not suffer any suppression in in expressing ourselves. I think the fair dealing approach is something we support. The court will look into the purpose, and also the act, and also the consequences. We do not have option 4, but we have 3+. There are certain things that have to be considered. It's difficult to define exhaustively what fair dealing is, but it can be incorporated in the law as examples. Say, for example, political comments or political satire can be, say, included in the law. That is parody, and can be exempted. The definition can be by way of example rather than exhaustive. As for criminal consequences, there is a concern that even if the owner has not started any complaint, the administration takes action on criminal prosecution. I think we can impose a requirement under which criminal prosecution can only be instigated after civil litigation has begun. As for parody, it was a controversial topic in the last consultation. We really don't know what is the next step to be taken by the administration. Paul is our member. He has no time to express his view fully. Let me speak something on that concerning safe harbor. Now, when the C&E department comes, he can take away the whole computer system, and just like taking away all the newspapers, and you have nothing to sell. According the safe harbor is a code of ethics, code of ethics. If you have code of ethics, you comply with that, then one should be safe. Next, Mr. MAK. I have a written submission, but I will not speak according to my written submission. I want to respond to Session 1. Some say that UGC is something too early. I don't agree. In 2001, the argument was on secondary creation. It was not limited to parody. So the crux of the matter is parody, and is secondary creation. The discussion or the argument was over that rather than parody. We've heard some views which are rather scaring. UGC will lead to a lot of litigations. Well, it will lead to more disputes, but not more litigations. There will be more discussions. You cannot avoid people talking about it. It is not real litigation. And the government also holds the view that UGC is not specific. It cannot pass through the three-step test. But fair use itself is not specific. But nobody has challenged fair use, and say that it cannot pass the three-step test. As for freedom of speech, it says that freedom of speech is very limited, is just remotely related to copyright. But if you can only be free from threat or scare before you have freedom of expression, and copyright litigation can be a threat. We need a clear protection. The fifth point is about a certain film, or the Hamburglar. Now, there were cartoon characters which were of the olden days. They might have nearly been forgotten, but if we use these old cartoon or comic characters, we would be sued for infringing copyrights. I think in order to encourage creativity, we should widen the scope beyond parody. We should also take into account, give exemption to pastiche as well. Next, Mr. Kosaku Ikeda. Good morning. I spoke on behalf of Popularization Committee for Vocaloid Culture. Vocaloid culture includes secondary creation, and that includes a lot of adaptation and remaking and recreation on music. It started, Vocaloid culture started in Japan, and it has spread to other parts of the world. And when you develop Vocaloid culture in Hong Kong, you may breach the law. Some just makes the concept of creativity with say, a piece of diamond or gem. Now, if you change some music, some video, and then it will become infringement of copyright, and that will mean death to creativity. We are adding our creativity, adding our creation to existing products. This is also creativity, and we can only share our creativity and share our products in order to promote creativity. We should the approach, the method employed, the media employed may be very different from the original product, and they will not replace the original product. Having secondary creation will not take away the market for the underlying work. In fact, secondary creation assists the rise in sales of the original work. There is no point to outlaw secondary creation. At present, the law is already in favor of the copyright owner of the original underlying work. It's a kind of special privileges. This is unfair to the creative artists. The present consultation is a piecemeal arrangement. It does not include other kinds of secondary creation. UG exemption should be given based on UGC. An exemption should include exempting civil liability and also criminal liability. And also, I express my anger towards cash, which is always imposing hefty charges against a lot of creative artists. And Creative Commons should be promoted. Next is Mr. Pham. Now, according to the Intellectual Property Department, it only conducts a consultation on parody but not secondary creation. Other secondary creation is not exempted.
If a translation is an original work, then you should just close everything down, because there are lots of translated work on the internet. And if you want to extract translation from it, it is impossible. A lot of people of the same mind, they don't work for money. They engage in translation work and they don't make any money. They just want to do what they think is right. There are a lot of translation websites. Do you have to take them all down? Just like Wikipedia, there is a lot of translation work involved. If the IPD is brave enough to close down Wikipedia and to tell them that they have contravened Hong Kong law, then they can talk to us about copyright protection. We have to have our own freedom. If you talk about commercial value, then it is a completely different arena. Of course, if you treat it as a commercial item, then you will talk about monetary value. But we're talking about freedom of expression and freedom of communication, whether it's translation, parody, or secondary creation. The administration has no right to take that from us. If the translation work is for publication, to be sold in bookshops or used in cinemas, then yes, there are other considerations. But if it is not used for commercial purpose, then it should be left untouched. If the administration is adamant in not giving exemption to translation, if they insist on endorsing this draconian law, that means that they want to chase translators out of Hong Kong because they're not given any room for survival. Other than feeling angry, there is nothing we can do. And I want to recite a poem. It's to the effect that I still have lingering thoughts of this world. I feel sad. I support the UGC option 4. Next, Mr. Lai. Come on in, everyone. Well, they want to differentiate commercial parody and parody in the community. The three options are not ideal, and there should be option 3 plus UGC. And that will be the fourth option, and that will be the way to address the inadequacies. The copyright owners said that UGC will increase litigation, but on the other hand, say that UGC is not reliable because there are no court cases. UGC has been in place for a year, and there is still no court cases. You can see it in a different way. It shows that when it comes to direct infringement and secondary creation, there is now a clear distinction. People will not inadvertently break the law. This is resolved effectively. There won't be any more legal dispute, and this is the right way forward. Let me give you some more information about technological advancement and people using copyrighted work. This year in June, in Mingpao, there is an article about iWorld. It involves a secondary creation, and it also makes use of an Android app. If you take something from YouTube or a website, you find a song you like, then the voice of the original singer can be used to sing the lyrics you've just put in. You can use the apps to input lyrics, or even use voice command to enter the lyrics, and then you will have your own piece of music or film. When technology advances to a stage when it is widely used, and if the legislation is too strict, there will be more people breaking the law, and that is not good. With technological and development of the internet, there may be difficulties created, but if you can tap into the opportunity to make money, I think there will be a balance. That's all I want to say. Thank you, Mr. Lai. Let us do it this way. Members have asked a lot of questions. Mr. Sin, you have not asked your questions yet, so I will let you ask your question, and Mr. Raymond Chan as well. I just want to ask a simple question. I would like a written response from the administration. They talk about UGC and a fourth option. UGC is adopted in Canada. You've now heard option 4. So does it contravene international convention requirements? That is the requirement of the universal copy, the World Intellectual Property Organization. And the point about not being prejudicial to copyright owners. Advocates of this idea, who makes the decision? Who decides whether it is not prejudicial to the copyright owner? The view of the copyright owner or the view of the person of secondary creation? The scope can be very wide, and it may include loss of goodwill. Next, Mr. Ray Chan. As far as I know, when it comes to the fourth option, the administration still has an open mind. There is no preconceived stance. Some deputation said that the Secretary has identified certain difficulties. I'd like to hear from the administration what these are. About the fourth option and the difference between that and Canada, you keep saying that it's different from Canada. and it's different. If there is an option that is exactly the same as the Canadian approach, will you find that acceptable? Or is it the case that you will still find that unacceptable? We've been talking about international requirement, international standard, international pressure, and you also say that there is no international precedents or court decisions. But our administration is very strange. When it comes to copyright, they talk about precedents, but when it comes to human rights, they don't say that. When it comes to human rights, they said there is no need to follow precedents. They said all we need is just public publicity and education. But we are signatories to international convention. Are we talking about very little international pressure? Well, I asked you to legislate for against discrimination. You said that no, there is no need. We have to take into account the Hong Kong situation and that in China, and all we need is publicity and education. You can't say that there is no court case and no precedents overseas, and we should not start. Can we take the lead? Can we have a definition of the relevant terms? Well, you can still be creative when it comes to legislation. We can be the first. Well, if you would like to give us your speaking notes, deputations, and individuals, please write down your names and give it to the staff, and we will get them. DS. I will give an overall response, and I'll do it as fast as possible. First, a timetable. DS. We have extended the consultation to the 15th of November because we would very much like to collect your views. Once we've done so, we will deal with them, we will consider them, and to find the way forward, the way that is the most beneficial to Hong Kong. When it comes to option 4, or maybe option 5, or other options, like those proposed by Du Jin, we have yet to receive the actual proposal. Well, you fine-tune your proposal and you have to submit them to us. We've been asked many times, including questions from legislators about the fourth option, about the Canadian approach. We have an open mind. When we're asked, we will say that we will tell you our understanding of the Canadian approach, whether it is controversial, whether there are similar approach adopted by other countries, and what are the arguments involved. We see that option 4 is more lax than the Canadian approach. Is it the case that if it works in Canada, it will work in Hong Kong? I can't give you an answer today. We have to look into it in detail. And as to whether we can take the lead, well, there are certain things under the copyright ordinance that we have taken the lead. Say, for example, the Internet. We are the first to write that into our law. There are some internationally recognized standards. Say, for example, the 3-step test is recognized internationally, and that is the minimum requirement when it comes to an exemption. And we have to abide by that, and we have to take that into consideration. Ms. Lau asked whether there is any common ground or a general direction that we all agree. Through communications, we aim at finding common ground, and I think there is common ground. And they all talk about a non-commercial nature, and that it will not affect the copyright owner. It will not be prejudicial to them economically. And copyright owners say that they don't mind about these secondary creations as long as it doesn't get in the way of their business and as long as it doesn't undermine their legal rights. So I think there is a principle that it will not harm others. And we have to try to translate it into legal language. And in relation to the three-step test, what are they? Well, any exemptions will have to be case-specific. And it should not be a general approach. And there will not be any conflict with the original work, and there will not be unreasonable damage to the copyright owner. We see eye to eye in this regard, and we just have to translate it into legal language, and that is the way forward for us. Anyone else? I'd like to respond to what members asked. I'm Wu. Well, it's the case that as long as it is not commercial and that it does not harm economically the copyright owner, who decides that? Of course, we have to look at the spirit of the law. The Supreme Court of Canada, they say that exemption is the right of users. So a healthy copyright system should take into account the right of the user and the right of the owner. If we do not create any economic prejudice, then is it reasonable to impose such requirements on us? IFPI gave you a report in January 2012. And that they mentioned about a number of songs modified or copied from existing songs. Some of them involve the band Mr. And they think that exemptions should not be given. And the most recent submission given by IFPI, the one they gave this morning, said that parody should meet 9 conditions before they can be exempted. Otherwise, they would create prejudice. Can they give us some specific examples? We've been asking for that. And we can give them a lot of examples that warrants an exemption. We don't want our freedom to be undermined. We're talking about freedom of expression so that we will not live in fear. Mr. Sin, you are representative of the Pan-Democrats. You should support democracy and freedom. You should not think that unreasonable rights of copyright owners should prevail, that they should have the right to sue, that they have the right to affect our daily lives. You won't be so foolish, will you? Sorry, speakers of mic. And about the 3-step test, if that is so important, we see that UGC meets the requirement. In 2011, when the idea of more than trivial economic prejudice was first floated, it was the first. It was never proposed before. Does that meet the 3-step test? Today, there are some legislators or some copyright owners who copy the same idea, saying that the UGC does not meet the 3-step requirements. Then why did they not raise the same question when it comes to the more than trivial economic prejudice back in 2011? Or I'd like to speak because Mr. Sin mentioned my name. Some of the questions have been answered about the 4 conditions under UGC. One of them is that the new work will not in essence cause damage to the original work, and very often is for the court to define and explain. Let me give you an example. We see a parody. It's the Hitler clip. Hong Kong TV license was used in the Hitler clip. So does it cause economic prejudice to the original work? Of course, the person who modified the clip thinks that that is not the case. Who else would like to speak? Sorry, it's because of mic. Can we ask questions of the officials? Yes. Yes, you may. The officials may reply to you, or they may do so in written form. The administration said on one hand there is no preconceived stance, and on the other they said that they have international duty. Are you schizophrenic? Or are you just taking back your word? You said in a non-open occasion to political parties that there are reservations of the fourth option. If that is the case, then you should make it open. Then we will have an open discussion instead of us talking what we have in mind without any communication. Mr. Charles Mok, a very simple point. I heard from deputations about safe harbor. We do not talk about what was included, what is included in the previous amendment. And if you have any views about the other parts, you have to speak out, because that will be part of the bill when it's introduced. Mr. Hong mentioned about ethics. I don't think, strictly speaking, it's a code of ethics. It's a notice or notice to take down, and they are not included in the law. Don't just focus on this part. Give us your views about the other areas so that we can start talking about details. That is very important. We will scrutinize those other parts when the bill is introduced. I don't want it to be left blank, because in this way we will not know what it's all about when the bill is endorsed. People talk about the fourth option, but I've also heard from copyright owners that there will be the fifth option.
I heard in the last deputation that they may actually come up with certain comments, new comments on the 15th of November, and that may not be good because we want time for there to be discussion. If there is indeed an option 5 which comes to your attention late in the day in the consultation period, would the administration still be open to making responses to this new option? Well, if I can just summarize, Mr. Wong, you have heard a lot of views today. The consultation period goes on till the 15th of November. It's been extended. And you have also noted down some of the common grounds. There's an option 4, option 5, maybe more. And if there are further options, would you please come up with them and submit to them early, so that there is time and room for discussions? You want to speak? Can you please be brief? Well, the CAPCO option. As CAPCO had mentioned, if there are some TVB drama which violate the copyright, and they are in the wrong in that case, and they should be penalized. And actually there was a program which called on the former staff of TVB to rejoin. I think these are infringes on copyright, and they are in the wrong themselves. And also there are certain games. The games are put onto the net, and we actually alert netizens of the features of the new game, and this actually does not infringe on anybody's copyright, but rather benefits them in their marketing. So these are some of the situations I would like to bring to your attention. Also, if the UGC is not acceptable at the end of the day by the administration, will there be another option coming out apart from the three that you've put forward? Will there be time for discussions before the 15th? Mr. MAK had mentioned that there should be further room for discussions before then. Well, Mr. Chairman, let me just clarify. Some people in the profession have told me that they will not come up with a new option until the 15th, November 15th. Well, if that is the case, and that does not leave us time for discussion, right? So shouldn't it be proposed early on in the day, rather? Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will continue to talk to the sector and the people. In fact, in the past few days, we've had 3 rounds of discussions already, so we will continue with that effort and we'll keep an open mind. Mr. Fong and Mr. MAK have asked a question. Apart from the three options in front of us, are they mutually exclusive? No, they are not. And also we'll be listening to a 4th option and maybe more. But if you ask about our observation as of now, we'll be happy to share with you that, but that should not affect the final outcome of the consultation. We will continue to keep an open mind and listen to your views. Well, I hope the time from now till the 15th can be utilized to the optimum so that there will be maximum opportunities for communications. Again, I would like to thank the deputations for coming to this session. Are there any other business? If there are none, then I would declare this meeting closed. The next meeting will be on the 19th of November for the regular meeting of this panel. Thank you for coming.